Okay, we will go ahead and call to order the Longmont Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for April 19th, 2023. First item is the roll call.
Chairman Poland.
Here.
Commissioner Height.
Present.
Commissioner Tedda.
Here.
Commissioner Goldberg. Here. Commissioner Flagg. Here. Commissioner Lukacs. Commissioner Popkin. Councilmember Rodriguez. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Next item is communications from Planning Director Glenn Van Denwigen.
The only thing I'd like to do is introduce our Assistant City Attorney, Patrick Tyrell, who is, Jeremy, I'm sorry. I have an old friend named Patrick Tyrell, but anyhow. But he'll be joining us this evening, and I think into the future.
Thank you very much, and welcome, Jeremy. Next item is public invited to be heard. This is for items that is not appearing on the public hearing items for tonight's agenda. I will remind everybody that they have 5 minutes to talk. It is a chance for you to speak your thoughts and opinions on things that you care about for Longmont. It is not a question and answer session. It is a chance for you to speak and let us know, but there will be no answers from our commission in regards to that. So at this time, we have a list of people signed up, and we will start with Mark Danielson.
There it is. Red means on.
And also,
Okay,
please
counterintuitive.
state your name and address for the record.
Yes. Well. Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Mark Danielson, and I live with my wife Annie at the corner of Lincoln and Spruce, a half block east of the proposed Bond Farm development in the heart of Old Town Longmont. I'm opening for a group of speakers you will hear tonight and over the next few months. Together, we represent the neighborhoods surrounding the proposed development. Together, we are committed to fostering a safer, friendlier neighborhood, and together, we are calling on you to reject this proposal until it is brought into alignment with Longmont's growth plans as expressed in Envision Longmont, our agreed to and broadly supported comprehensive plan summarizing the intent of development, along with, of course, the municipal code, which obviously should follow and support that intent. Thank you for a few moments of your time. You may remember that this application was preceded in 2020 by a proposed development of the property which asked for approval of 46 units, which varied in size and character. If so, you may also remember the surrounding neighborhood was united in a unanimous shrug. While few neighbors, we can assume, would prefer the beautiful lot be developed at all, that proposal resonated with the neighborhood as somehow reasonable. So there was effectively zero opposition to the idea, and it passed without obstruction. In contrast, this new proposal, which wants to put over 70 three-story units on the 5-acre lot, was immediately met with unanimous outcry. The density, the traffic, the height and mass of the buildings relative to the surrounding community, everyone could see this bore no resemblance to the original proposal and was clearly misguided and irresponsible. You may be tempted to ask, isn't this just people's basic resistance to change? Isn't this just knee-jerk NIMBY? Absolutely not. Let me explain. Some of us began meeting together weekly when this was proposed. We did a quick survey and found 95% of neighbors opposed to this plan, so we circulated a petition. We, the undersigned, urge you not to recommend or approve construction of 70 three-story townhouses on the Bond family farm site. We call on you to amend the project to include no more than 46 units of 2 stories or less with 3 on-site parking spots per unit. We very quickly collected nearly 250 signatures from the immediate neighborhood, and that is the mandate of our group. Clearly, we're not afraid of change. We were and are prepared to accept responsible development. We're opposed to giving developers a blank check for irresponsible development at our expense. And we will oppose this irresponsible plan with all the strength we have. The challenge for you, of course, is balancing the short-term profit concerns of the developer alongside the long-term health of the neighborhood, balancing the broadly accepted strategy of Envision Longmont alongside the specific rules of the municipal code, balancing the desire for increased density with the rights of home-owning neighbors. There's no mathematical formula for that, no algorithm to guide us, which is why, congratulations, your jobs are not at risk from ChatGPT. This is complex stuff and requires human wisdom and reasoned judgment. We are here, bottom line, to help you navigate that complex balancing act. And we understand clearly this is not about your preferences or ours. This is about Longmont's municipal laws, Longmont's published vision of its future, which is why we're committed along the way to offering chapter and verse from both, with the objective of coming alongside to help you do the right thing. In fact, as you may know, we haven't stopped at merely trying to shrink this existing proposal. We have gathered a team of professionals to create an exciting alternative design to showcase how this property can be developed in a way that profits the developer while also enhancing the neighborhood. We look forward to revealing those plans in the meetings to come. When Annie and I walk along the beautiful St. Vrain River Walk every week, we see a plaque commemorating the council members that approved that project. We're here to ensure that Bond Farm becomes a project that you can probably sign off on and showcase to future commissioners and staff as an example of wise and sensitive infill development. As this proposal stands today, it would be a permanent blight on the neighborhood that generations to come would shake their heads and ask, and who in the world thought this was a good idea? We can and must do better. Together we will. 46 units,
Okay.
2 stories,
Thank you,
3
Mr.
on-site parking
Thank you,
spots.
Mr. Danielson.
Thank you for working with us.
Next on the list is Cheryl Carter Pierce. Once again, I remind you have 5 minutes, and please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Cheryl Carter Pierce, and I live at 210 Judson Street. Slides are there. This first slide is simply an advertisement that was advertising the property before Mark Young bought it in 2020. And it's just indicating that the concept plans had been approved for up to 48 units. The second slide shows the previously approved concept plan, and it shows the diversity of architecture, which Mark referred to the neighborhood approving of. We have the flats in the front, which are condos essentially. We have a cluster of townhomes throughout the property, which are indicated by A, and then D would be the single-family dwellings. And at the bottom, you can notice that there is a 2-acre farm, and there is ample green space around and through the development. The previously approved plan was primarily a 2-story development. The parking structure was below grade to alleviate height concerns along Spruce Avenue. The 2-story design was far more compatible with the surrounding single-story homes. The 1-story flats were ADA accessible. There was architectural diversity. There were flats, townhomes, and single-family homes. There was extensive common area and green space, plenty of room for residents to socialize, 2 acres of community-supported agriculture, walking paths, etc. The condos and townhomes were to be between 700 and 1,800 square feet, as well as single-family homes. The price points were quite wide to appeal to a broad range of buyers, ages, and economic abilities. It also allowed for aging in place because of the 1-story design, excuse me, of the condos. Now I'm talking about the current development. Proposed development is all 3 stories above grade, They are, you can see from this slide, they're just blocks of consistent design. There is very little green space. There is only 18 feet between door to door, front door to front door. There is very limited sidewalk space, and the sidewalks appear to just dump out into the driveways or the roadways. There is inadequate green space there, and as well as inadequate resident and guest parking. So by reducing the density, which we had formerly or previously accepted, it would allow for more open spaces, more parking, more sidewalks, and more walking paths. The next slide shows the monolithic design and the redundancy of architecture. This rendering is actually only showing 6 units. The proposed development is supposed to have 6 units per block. When we compare the concept plans, are the buildings compatible with the height and scale of the existing neighborhood, consisting primarily of single-story homes? Previous concept, yes. Current, no. Are the total number of housing units compatible with the existing neighborhood? Previous, yes. Current, no. Does the development have multiple diverse styles and sizes of housing reflecting the diversity of the Bond Farm neighborhood? Current, previous, yes. Current, no. Is there adequate parking within development to minimize concerns over local street parking constraints? Previous, yes. Current, no. Does it incorporate green space and common areas within the development for communal access and use? Previous, yes. Current, no. The previous, I'm missing, oh, there it is. This slide indicates the 2 stories above grade on Spruce Avenue. You can see that the parking was designed to take advantage of the site, the sloping of the site, so it would not have been visible from Spruce Avenue, as did this 2-story building, also taking advantage of the slope. The next slide, there.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay,
Carter-Pierce.
thank you.
Next person is Charlie Schilling.
Hello, Commissioners and Chairman. Thank you for the chance to speak
Once
with
again,
you.
state your name and address for the record.
My name is Charlie Schilling. I live at 224 Francis Street. I'm part of the Bond Farm Neighborhood Group, also speaking about the Bond Farm development. This particular property has a history that's important to understand. This is a quote from the January 13th, 1313 Spruce Avenue DRC comment letter for submittal from the Longmont Planning Department. The history is important to understand. There's an important precedent here that needs to be illuminated. The Bond Farm approval was a PUD, which is a special exception and required a higher criteria. The City Council and Planning and Zoning were very enthusiastic about the previous development we just heard about on this property. PUDs have been previously used for projects and developers used for projects that developers brought and did not fit the current development code. But because the Bond Farm development project was thoughtful, creative, and innovative to those involved, the city was willing to deal with the developer and cut certain agreements around the development code so the project could have the best outcome. In the case of the previous Bond Farm development plan, the developer was allowed to put higher density than was allowed in the zoning at the time in exchange for a thoughtful design that was acceptable to the surrounding neighborhood. That's the precedent we're talking about. The history, precedent, and intent for this property is clear. In 2016, the city annexed the Bond Farm under a special PUD in order to bring a really good project into Longmont that was compatible with the surrounding Bond Farm neighborhood. The city loved it because it had more density than the adjacent zoning and it allowed the city to place a much-needed park in the area. The neighbors realized this was a much better option than other potential alternatives, so we embraced it as well. As the previous development plan was slowly funded and developed, Envision Longmont and rezoning came along in 2017. The city decides that south of Spruce should be RMN, partly because the Bond Farm is now allowing for higher density. They went with RMN for the entire area to make it contiguous to avoid spot zoning. The previous development project couldn't make the financials work due to the developer wanting to control the commercial portion of the project, and his investors were frustrated and cut their losses and walked. Now, forward to August 2022, the new applicant, Mark Young, with APG2 Company, is trying to take advantage of the new higher zoning, which could be argued that the higher density zoning is there only because of the previous PUD for the first Bond Farm proposal, and tries to insert a much higher density concept that is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, without considering the history, concerns, or compatibility of the neighborhood. The new applicant is trying to erase or ignore the original PUD, so the original intent and precedent would be lost. The original intent and precedent of the Bond Farm PUD and zoning change was for a thoughtful, creative development design that was an exception, not for just anyone to take the zoning and exploit it however they wanted or do whatever they want with it. There is precedent here that needs to be recognized. Please look at how we got here. We look forward to speaking with you next month to discuss how the current concept proposal for this property conflicts with city codes. We also want to talk about the land use housing legislation controversy that's at the national, state, and local levels, especially in Fort Collins. I assume you're watching that. And we're most excited about showing you the alternative concept plan that we developed, that the neighbors like, the city planning department was pretty enthusiastic about, and it meets city code and Envision Longmont and has positive financials in the pro forma. It's a great opportunity for the city, the developer, and the community to work together for a great solution, and it will respect the precedent. So I misspoke in this paragraph. The city planning department was very enthusiastic about the concept that we've developed, and we'll be showing it to you next week. Thank you for listening and your consideration of this very important piece of Longmont.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Next on the list is Tom Smith.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name's Tom Smith. I live at 1049 Champion Circle. I'm here with some of my fellow neighbors to talk about some concerns that precede our issues with proposed development. Jane is passing around a set of slides that we don't anticipate going over. We have some concerns. Those are there for partly as background for you. I need to find our presentation, and I'll be billing Bond Farm for this time. Here we go. Right here. Next one. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, to proceed here, what we'd like to share with you is a conundrum that we face with a number of things that are facing us right now as we've dug into this, and we are quite the newbies in terms of learning about this. We have questions about zoning, and these have floated up as we've learned about the situation with the development. We have people that have been through all 188 pages of Envision Longmont many times. We've looked at a number of documents, discovering the Colorado Land Planning and Development Law, found that Mr. Elliott helped develop that, as well as is one of the leads with the consulting team, found some information such as the PUDs can't be approved without written permission from landowners. And this has led us into some other questions about some consistency items. And we'd like to have you weigh some of these things. And at the end, probably we're here seeking some direction and help from you. The items highlighted in blue here come from the document that I referred to that Mr. Elliott helped develop for this group. And the items at the bottom come from Envision Longmont. And you can see here where our subdivision, Champion Greens, was identified as a neighborhood of an area of stability. And that contrasts with the item above where it says a neighborhood that supports the requested zoning and has a change. And we're trying to figure out over 25 years what that change may have been for us. The second side, the lower right, talks about proposed zoning change, and it says a PUD conversion. And there's some things to contrast with about a half a mile down the road with this peak view that you can see is also was proposed for a change as well. Excuse me. The peak view one led us to learn about spot zoning, whereas they had this strip of land next to it, like we also had a strip of land right next to us. And for some reason, they are moving forward with an approval for developing single-family homes on a piece of land similar to ours. And that evolved into asking some more questions. And as you can see, the red circle around the peak view is the same color as our subdivision is. And then you see here a copy of an email from a city planner explaining why there are differences here. And ours is the lower left one, and excuse me, looking at the lower right slide next to the golf course, the arrows from the article, from the email, says that the peak view is surrounded by residential single family. It is not. It also says it has adjacency, but not to RMN. That's all that is surrounded by, according to city mapping at the time this was taken. Our neighborhood is all single family, although it was put into the RMN zoning district. Seems to be an inconsistency there to us. And then that blanketed into the proposed annexation and development. That would, in our minds, benefit two property owners to develop as they wish. Not making a judgment here, but it sure seems to be an inconsistency as to how the valley and our subdivisions ended up where they are. Leaving it for you to maybe look in the rearview mirror a little bit with that, as well as what appear to be fairly inconsistent interpretations and written by city planning. The peak view, the single family, then you see it's incorporating the planning and desire for single family in yellow, but the map on the left shows in white as the county will indicate to you that's rural residential. That is not in the city, and it's not single family at all per Longmont. Then this reinforces for you that our subdivision is stable, not designated for change. And this, to give you a perspective, is the before
Thank you, Mr.
and the
Smith.
after of what our subdivision is like. I'd like to now introduce Jeff Woodward, who's one of our neighbors who will take you through some of the additional information here.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Jeff Woodward. I live at 1057 Champion Circle. In fact, that is my house there on the left. This is how the house or the neighborhood looks right now. You can see those trees in the back. Those trees did not exist when Champion Greens was built. At that time, we had an unobstructed view of the Front Range. The property owner of that parcel behind us let it go feral, and it has become a de facto wildlife sanctuary. I've got video of deer, bear, cougar, you name it, fox coming through there. Anyway, so that's what it looks like now. And this is what it would look like if the proposed development takes place. It would eliminate any views for us, and we would have people looking into our backyards. So one of the things that Tom had mentioned was the topic of PUDs. Now, I looked at my covenants for my property, and as well as the incorporation documents for the homeowners association. Both those documents, in several places, mention that it is a planned development. And if it is true that a planned development cannot be rezoned without the permission of the property owners, then something went awry, because I was never given any notice, nor were any of my neighbors given any notice to sign off on. So I think that is something that is worth your consideration and investigation. This is a slide that talks about something out of the Longmont's municipal code, and it talks about adverse impact. And we believe that allowing the construction of this type of building behind our property would create an adverse impact as defined in the Longmont municipal code. And it's also in opposition to the purpose and intent of the land development code, and as was put into the Envision Longmont. It talks about the, as I read the code and the Envision Longmont aspirations, you want to sort of have a transition between what is there, and you want to keep things sort of in scale. At least that's my reading of the code and that. This type of development next to this doesn't seem like it matches scale. Doesn't seem like it is any sort of a transition. The other thing about this neighborhood that you should take a look at, if you want to do a Google Earth search, if you look for a 1 mile radius around this property, immediately to the west of this property is property that is in the Boulder open space area. It will be there in perpetuity. Immediately to the south is the St. Vrain corridor. The St. Vrain River is within 700 feet of this property. Within a mile radius of this property, it is only single-family homes. This is at the very western edge of Longmont. It would really look like a pimple on your forehead when you look at it in relation to everything that's around it. It is out of character with the surrounding open space. It's out of character with the surrounding neighborhoods. To the south are the ponds you get that are there. So we believe, that this type of development is not appropriate in this particular area. It doesn't match up with the purpose and intent of the code. And let's get down to a few more things. When you look at Boulder County's description of the property, it also shows that property that is immediately to the west of us is part of the Champion Greens subdivision. And that was the original intent at one time. as I understand it. And I'd like to introduce Mr. David Ray.
David Ray, please.
My name is David Ray. I'm a more recent resident of Champion Greens. That's within the last few months. My major concern, quite frankly, is the proposed plan to change the nature of the surrounding properties.
Can you please give your name and address for the record?
Oh, I
please?
thought I did. I'm sorry. My name is David Ray. My address is 1023 Champion Circle, and that is in Champion Greens. Hence, I'm here. So anyway, I was saying that the real concern I have is that the proposed change of the character of the neighborhood. And although this isn't any document, the municipal code or the municipal act or envision, but they do say you can't really change the nature of the community, the surrounding community, unless there's an agreement. Now, what I've moved into, when I moved here, is an older community. That doesn't mean older in terms of the foundations, but it's older in terms of age. And although I'm only 28 years old, most of the people are quite a bit older than I. And the plans, you'll note, call for the access to what they call 8513 Vrain property is to the northwest corner, which is frankly next to the house that I bought. And it's a small road, and with the proposed plan for 56 units in that next area, that would be an increase of traffic. Could be all types of traffic, not just elderly people going through, but perhaps unaware of the elderly people who are trying to walk and live and enjoy their residences where they've lived for now many years. If you look at this slide here, it's in the documents you have received. You notice the difference between the Boulder County documents and the municipal documents, and they go back, the municipal documents, you'll see go back to 1996. And you'll see some conflicts there. Now, one of the conflicts here is that you'll notice that on the left side of the property, which was mentioned before, is a corridor. That's an empty space, which is the proposed development space where they propose to put in 4 acres or thereabouts, 56 units. Some, as shown by Mr. Woodward, are 3 stories high, bunched together, which would completely destroy the vision of the Front Range, the mountains, all that to the west of this property, these properties. That is a major change that the people of Champion Greens have not agreed to. And as you'll hear, or as you did hear, all the properties in Champion Greens are single-family, smaller structures, not joined properties going up 3 stories. There's a big change in the neighborhood if you pose that. And although this isn't part of the issues presented here, if you go out to the property 8513, which is actually the entrances on 9th Avenue, what's proposed here is 2 entrances off Champion Greens. One, as I said, in the northwest corner of the property, and the other just south of that off Doral Avenue. Those are both areas that where elderly, and I hate to say it, people live, and the traffic going through there would be ridiculous. Now, it's been stated that they can't use the 2 entrances and exits that already exist on Airport Road for whatever municipal reason or county reason, and they can't use the entrance and egress on 9th Avenue. It just makes no sense whatsoever. So not only are you changing the character of the neighborhood for the people who live there, you're also changing the whole structure of the neighborhood, how people get in and get out, and the effect on them. Thank you for considering. I hope you do visit out at the property.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Next is Chris Crawford.
Hi there, Chris Crawford, 914 Champion Circle. I'm one of the contingent from Champion Circle here this evening. I am an original homeowner in the Champion Greens community by 9th and Airport, and I am speaking to you tonight to convey my firm opposition to the proposed townhome community of 57 structures at 8513 St. Vrain Road. This parcel of land is adjacent to the west side of our neighborhood, an area that was severely impacted by the flood of 2013. In an effort to learn more about the possible annexation and development of this parcel of land, I went to the longmontcolorado.gov website and typed in Envision Longmont to read the entire document. And I noticed that on page 24, under Goals and Policies, the very last goal states, risks and effects associated with future flood events or other disasters are minimized by focusing growth out of flood or disaster-prone areas and designing critical infrastructure to withstand severe stresses. Then on page 61 of Envision Longmont, under 4.5A, hazard-prone areas, it states, implement best practices for mitigating risks and protecting the health and safety of residents, such as directing future growth and public/private investment away from the flood-prone areas, except for the purposes of hazard mitigation or ecological restoration. It further states encouraging the use of floodplains and major drainage facilities for recreational uses, open space, and other appropriate uses that preserve the natural environment. Further down on page 61, under 4.5C, Infrastructure and Facilities, there's a third section that states, develop mitigation strategies, redundancies, and backup systems, or consider relocation of city infrastructure and facilities located in the 100-year floodplain or in other areas prone to natural or geological hazards. Where relocation is not feasible, upgrade existing infrastructure and build new infrastructure to be able to withstand a greater degree of stress or damage from natural disasters. So it appears to me that the city has not only used taxpayer funds to build city infrastructure and facilities, but the city would again use taxpayer funds to relocate city infrastructure and facilities away from a previously flooded site. And if that's the case, I have to wonder why on earth the city would even consider allowing brand new construction on a previously flooded site. It is my sincere hope that this pivotal issue of whether or not the city should even consider annexing a previously flooded parcel of land will be carefully deliberated prior to making this very important decision. Thank you so much for your time and attention to this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. That is it for the list of people who had signed up to speak. If there's somebody else who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda today, who has not already spoken, I invite you up to speak. You do get your 5 minutes. And seeing nobody move forward, I will go ahead and close the public invited to be heard. The next item is approval of the minutes for the February 15th, 2023 meeting. Are there any comments, motions? Commissioner Goldberg.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I move to approve the February minutes.
Okay, we have one person for approval. Is there a second? Commissioner Teta. Oh, wait. Okay.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, Jane, let's go ahead and take a vote.
Commissioner Height? Commissioner Teta? Commissioner Goldberg?
Yes.
Chairman Poland?
Yes.
Commissioner Flake? Yes. Commissioner Lukacs? Aye. Commissioner Popkin? Aye. Chairman, that passes 6 approvals and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. Next item, now we'll move to public hearing. The next item is the Wallace Edition 5th Filing Amendment, a preliminary plat. Staff planner Jennifer Hewitt Epperson, Senior Planner, presenting. Okay.
I have separately, many years ago, worked with the Prospect Owners Association on a limited matter. I also worked with a lot owner in its design of a project in a property adjacent to this particular property. None of those previous work experiences would influence my consideration of the matters before us.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Thank you very much, Chairman and members of the Commission. Good evening. Jennifer Hewitt Apperson, Senior Planner here with the City of Longmont Planning and Development Services, speaking to you this evening about the Wallace Edition 5th Filing Amendment A Preliminary Plat, which I will refer to going forward as Wallace 5th because that is a mouthful. So the subject property is located at the intersection of South Main Street and Pike Road in the Prospect community, which is legally formally known as the Wallace Edition Planned Unit Development. So the Wallace 5th consists of 1.123 acres in the Wallace Edition Planned Unit Development, which is more commonly known as Prospect. The property currently contains the locally designated historic landmark Carlson Farmhouse and the associated buildings. The applicant proposes to subdivide its property into 6 parcels and related outlots, rights-of-way, and easements. One of the lots would contain the farmhouse and associated buildings, and the other 5 would be developed with single-family homes. So the Land Development Code requires that any proposed subdivision with 4 or more lots be first processed as a preliminary plat, which requires a public hearing before and approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's important to note also in projects such as this that the final plat and various public improvement plans may be reviewed concurrently as the preliminary plat is moving forward through the public hearing process. So we are running those processes concurrently at this point. So as noted previously, the subject property is located within the Wallace Edition Planned Unit Development, also known as Prospect. This is an 84-acre master plan new urbanist community that was originally approved in 1995 and planned by the noted firm of Dwani Plater Zyberk. The PUD has specific processes that are intended to provide flexibility as the project is built out. Particularly, there's an overall development plan for the community that guides future development and functions as a preliminary development plan that you would see for other planned unit developments that might come before you. As properties are planned for this development, a final development plan is prepared for that phase. These FDPs are effectively zoning documents for the subject phase. So the PUD was written in such a way that these FDPs are approved administratively by Planning and Development Services staff. Permissible uses and building types are reviewed at this stage. And once an FDP is approved, the development will then proceed through the standard preliminary plat process as defined by the Longmont Land Development Code, as well as any other subsequently required review processes. I give you this kind of summary because Prospect is a fairly unique community within Longmont, and its rules of play are quite a bit different than you would normally see for other properties and other subdivisions and developments in the community. So just taking you through the process to date for this particular phase of Wallace 5th. The Wallace 5th has followed the process just described. In addition, this project has gone through review by the Longmont Historic Preservation Commission. The proposed development plan was approved on September 30th, 2021 through the 5th filing Final Development Plan Amendment B, which is included with your packet. This amendment permits development of 5 single-family homes, plus relocation of the locally designated historic landmark farm buildings to the easternmost lot of this preliminary plat. The Carlson farmhouse would remain in its current location on what would be Lot 6 under the proposed preliminary plat. So as part of the FDP amendment process, so this particular parcel is has the other kind of regulatory wrinkle in that the original farmhouse is a locally designated historic landmark. So Historic Preservation Commission has reviewed this project a couple of times prior to this particular public hearing. So as part of this FDP amendment process, a certificate of appropriateness was approved by the Historic Preservation Commission in April 2021. This would permit relocation of the historic farm outbuildings to the proposed Lot 6. So basically it was a building relocation plan for the outbuildings. Again, the existing farmhouse would stay in its proposed location. This approval was conditioned on receiving a second certificate of appropriateness that included design guidelines and specified that the relocated buildings be moved as close as possible to the original layout on the larger property. The required second certificate of appropriateness was approved by the Historic Preservation Commission at their September 2022 meeting. The Commission also recommended at that time that the City Council approve an amendment to the historic landmark status for this property, really to clarify and specify that the historic landmark designation was specific to the structures rather than to the larger 1.123 acre property. The City Council approved this amendment on October 25th, 2022, and these documents are included as part of your packet for this item as well. So currently before this commission is the preliminary plat for the Wallace Fifth, and additionally, as I noted, staff is also working with the applicant and reviewing a final plat and public improvement plans for this particular property. So the preliminary plat is probably not as easy to see as we would like, but it is included with your package. So the preliminary plat depicts the proposed lot lines, right-of-way, and easements overlaid on the existing conditions of the Wallace Fifth. This is included as attachment 4 in your packet. The proposed plat consists of 5 lots that are approximately 4,500 square feet each. So you will see, let's see, there's my mouse, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And lot 6, which is approximately 16,500 and change square feet, or just under 0.4 acres. So this larger parcel, you can see the footprint of the original farmhouse, which would remain in place. This larger parcel will contain this farmhouse, and the associated outbuildings that are depicted here would then be relocated as per the relocation plan in the 2021 Certificate of Appropriateness included in your package. Access would be provided via a private alley that would be basically built to public alley specifications. So the alley is roughly here. It would connect through an additional alley through to Satisfaction Circle, which is part of the Wallace Edition 4th filing. The applicant will describe in his presentation how he's been coordinating with the team developing the 4th filing regarding access and some other infrastructure issues. Again, this is this is a fairly complex project in terms of the overall planned unit development. And there's a lot of coordination that happens between the various filings to ensure that the intent and purpose and guidance of the overall development plan is being satisfied. So with that, staff does recommend approval of the Wallace Edition 5th filing, Amendment A, subject to the following condition. Approval of the drainage report for the final plat is contingent upon 4th filing replat providing an adequate plan for water quality treatment. Basically, these two are going to be sharing some infrastructure, and the Wallace 4th filing is starting to work its way through the final plat, site plan, public improvement plan process as well. So they're running more or less parallel, and there's quite a bit of coordination that's going on between those applicants. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Jack Bestall, who is the applicant for this particular project. And let me see if I can get him to full screen. Hold on, technical difficulties here. Help, I need an adult. Ah, that one right there in front of me. Great, thank you. To be fair, I'm waiting on new glasses.
Good evening. I'm Jack Bestall, Bestall Collaborative. I have the good fortune of working on this project and representing the owners of the property. It's been a...
Pardon me, can you just give the address of your business just for the
I
public
can.
record?
P.O. Box 2223 Evergreen, 80437. I have an office also at 2nd and Main, but if you look me up on the state register, you'll see P.O. Box 2223 Evergreen.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. So we'll walk through this if we can and take a peek at what you'll be hopefully approving this evening in terms of the preliminary plat. Let's see if I can do this. This is a concept sketch which really kind of maybe shows a little bit more carefully or easily for your view how the property is put together. You can see this is the 4th filing to the south. This is the 5th filing, the 1.123. This is the alley that Jennifer referred to, and this connects to Satisfaction Circle, which is the roadway right here to the south. Of course, Pike's on the north and Main Street 287 is on the east. This is the existing sidewalk, existing trees, existing Carlstead farmhouse, and the historic buildings that would be moved to the lot 6, and then you can see the 5 lots to the west, which would front towards Pike in a traditional neighborhood type of setting, and back to the alley. We've worked with the 4th filing property owners, and we also we don't share, but we have the same civil engineer. The easiest way to coordinate it: storm, water, sewer, and so forth. Coming back to the first slide, I really liked what Carlson, this was here before. The house was actually built before Carlson bought this property, all of Prospect, and he used it really as what he called the home place. Because the reason it's historic really is not the building, although it's a nice house. It's the fact that he probably was the largest agricultural landowner in the Boulder County, moving here from Scandinavia. And then he would come home to this after he worked all day visiting all of his other properties. And it's an interesting history. And of course, this property is very interesting now. So as was outlined, our purpose was to preserve and sustain the Carlson farmhouse. And we thought that the best way to do that with the historic buildings was to reconfigure the area and to allow clustering of historic buildings around the farmhouse so the context was still there. We did that with the Certificate of Appropriateness, working with the Historic Preservation Commission and staff all the way through that process. And then we also prepared some design guidelines so that the 5 residential homes that get built on the 5 lots will be compatible. Now, compatible, I've learned, is in the eye of the beholder, and I'm hoping that you are sharing my view of this. But we went through that process, and then we went to the council as was outlined, and this was important because this all hinged on, can we just have the historic part be on lot 6? And so that, those requirements will be met for sure, and then we can also have the new development, which will carry the load on this property. So this was an early sketch, and you can see to the south, here's Satisfaction Circle, here's the alley, and it has a great name, which I cannot recall at the moment, but it would turn into this alley, and it will serve all the parcels. But this was one of the early ideas which got refined over time. Some of the outbuildings you probably are familiar with. The chicken house, which was actually Kiki's office, Kiki. The farmhouse, one of the garages. This is in the shape of a loafing shed, but I would suggest that it's a lot more modern building. It's really an equipment warehouse, storage building. We developed these design guidelines, which are meant to really set off the Carlson farmhouse. It's a very simple architecture. And we also needed, of course, to transition to the Prospect, which is immediately to the west. And some of this house now, I believe, is yellow. I'm trying to remember. It's a very bright color now. It's changed over the last year. And that's fine. That's what Prospect's all about. This is the barn that will be moved over. And the Historic Preservation Commission insisted that they be moved in their orientation. Having done a lot of historic work, that's tradition, it's protocol, and that's one thing we talked a lot about with them and how to do it. This is really the exemplar for the house. It's a classic revival house. This is a very fine one, but that's what we're looking at when we look at the Carlson. So we developed guidelines for traditional compatible styles. What we're talking about here is scale, texture, materials, but they don't have to be classic revival. So in this case, for example, national style or bungalow would be appropriate. These are traditional, but they're compatible. Colonial revival, craftsman. We reviewed these with the Historic Preservation Commission. We also met with Prospect Design Review Committee. We're not under their authority, but it's a great working group, good resource. And frankly, they felt that we kind of had thread the needle with this framework for design later on. Derivative styles might be modern farmhouse, see the modern farmhouse on the left, for example, reflecting the barn, modern craftsman. You can see this modern salt box, which is much like the barn, and other styles that are very similar. These are really derivative styles, but they're more contemporary in some cases, but they're compatible. We talked earlier about how do we work with the fourth filing. Here's Satisfaction Circle, and if anybody can read that, I'd love to know the name again. Here's the alley coming up on the west. We have Main on the east, and then north of these words, of course, is Pike, and this is the fifth filing where we're operating. So the axis would be off Satisfaction Circle. This is not probably their latest plan, but it's one that I had in my file where we were working through some of these access points. So I don't want to represent it as being the final plan that they have. But all of the infrastructure, water, sewer, storm, drainage, rain garden, water quality, access points, all is similar. And I'd be glad to answer questions on that when we're there. And so this is how that aligns, and you can see the alley here. And this is also, this currently is the access to the house and Prospect to the west. It could be access to this house, but this also could be access from the alley. And then you can see also how this works with the buildings being moved to the east, all on lot 6. These are hard to read, but this is the proper form for the preliminary plat. And what it's showing is how this might, in fact, be developed over time. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks for your patience as I move through that.
Thank you, Mr. Bestel. This is a public hearing item, which means we do open up for public invited to be heard. That is a chance for the public to make comments regarding this agenda item. Jane is getting the sign-up sheet. Very good. Okay, there is nobody who has signed up. At this point, before we do our discussion and questions, I think it would be appropriate to take a 5-minute break. And we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Look at this. Actually,
yeah.
So I had my powder case and my Good to see you. Yeah. That's cool. Chris. 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 Continue. Please. Okay, I think we are ready to resume. Yes. Okay. Okay. And are we ready to go? Okay. We have Commissioner Height.
Mr. Basal, I have questions for you. Several, the first of which is my most troubling thought, just density. You are mixed-use neighborhood, which by our statute 1503-0803A2 needs to be between. The density for your property needs to be between 6 and 8 DUs per acre, and you're 5.3. You're close, but the standard's rather exact. Do you have a position on that?
I think it's a great opportunity to defend less density. Having heard what I heard earlier.
It is counterintuitive.
But Howard, the direct answer is we went through a final development plan amendment that I think was outlined for you by staff. And we tried to get something that would work with the historic nature of the property and with Prospect. So the lots are a little bit bigger than what you might find in Prospect, but the amendment is the key, and that's what we're following, which did change. It did change the density.
I follow that. I think I follow the ODP, the overall development plan, and these FDPs, and the fact that you've amended this FDP, and I applaud you too. I think it's a great design, except that you're stuck with our code that says 6 to 8 DUs in the zoning district you were in. So my question is, did you talk with anyone about a variance?
No, I didn't. It was unnecessary. The code doesn't require that, number one. Number two, sometimes I fall back on the fact I work publicly, and this isn't really my answer, but we're meeting the requirements of a final development plan amendment process, and that process can alter the strict black and white nature of a code, but I'm sure these people are much more qualified to answer.
So if I may, Commissioner Height, follow up on that. So admittedly, the FDP amendment predates my time with the city of Longmont. However, my understanding of it is it looks at the larger neighborhood center section, a designated section of the Prospect community of the ODP. So if you look at the larger that larger section that includes the fourth filing, the density is there. And I think that my understanding, and Glenn, correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but my understanding is it was looked at as more as a whole rather than as the component, if that makes sense, because it is part of this larger PUD.
And the only thing I'll add is a planned unit development, which does allow the flexibility and changing of the underlying zoning. So that's where the overall development plan comes from.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. In the, Mr. Bastal, back to you. In the change from Amendment B to this one, which is replat A, Lot 2 is gone. What happened to that?
Interesting.
8 and 7 or something like that in our development.
This is all on lot 1, and lot 2 was to the west, I believe, as I recall the original plat. So it wasn't on this property.
But where did it go? I mean, how it was part of this?
I can't answer that. I don't. It wasn't a part of this property, so I wasn't focused on. Is that correct?
No, it was.
It's the 2 lots. Thanks a lot. Lot 2 is over here.
Yep.
So it didn't go anywhere.
It's not included in your acreage determination. It's not.
No, it's not.
Included as part of your development
No.
plan at all.
No, unless it was by accident, but we certainly didn't want to.
It's not part of this particular plat, so.
It's owned by another party, and there's a house built on it.
It is? Okay. That answers where it went. And I'm not even sure it's relevant to this, but it was raised. The HOA coordination, you're going to create a homeowners association for this Wallace 5. Is there a plan to make it part of the larger community, or is it going to stand alone, or are there plans in that regard?
Yeah, our intent is to look at an HOA that would be independent and it wouldn't be a part of Prospect.
Would not be.
That's right. Would not be.
And coordination with Wallace 4 is just going to be contractual and not part of a homeowner association. The ingress, egress, the shared driveways. That's
correct. The way we've organized this is that it works relatively well in that regard. You can see here that it's a clean break. Our property boundary is right here, and there's access here, which will be, the city will make sure that the plat allows the access to this property. This is already a dedicated alley here. These will be dedicated. So we also have water and sewer. They're not shared, though. All these are under the city's authority.
actually about Katie Circle. That's what it's called. Katie Lane is a private.
Christie Circle.
Christie Court. I thought that was private. I mean, that's. Is Christie private or is it public? Do you know?
Christie Court would be public. It basically
the homeowner comments suggested that it was private. And your south alleyway is going to be private?
We've designed it to meet public standards, and that's our next step. I think that we probably will dedicate it, and I think that's what's preferred by the city because we have utilities in it.
Fire and emergency vehicles are going to be able to access it appropriately. I'm not so sure that has to be.
I spend a lot of my time professionally with Mark Sampson, who you may not know, but he reviews everything for the fire department, and he reports to the chief. And so you better believe this has excellent emergency access for all first responders, second and third responders. And I'm making a little bit light of it, but we take it seriously. And you really have to coordinate with fire almost before you start a plan these days.
Yeah, I would trust as much, but again, the comments that I was reading, and I don't see I couldn't really tell how big your alley was going to be.
Yeah, it meets International Fire Code standard.
And I did not see that it was connected into superstition. I don't know what the name of this.
Satisfaction
Circle.
Do you see this little stub here?
Yeah.
And this stub here?
Yeah.
And then this is Satisfaction Circle right here. So that's where they tie. And then it ties again off the existing alley right here. And he's happy with that. They'll all have fire suppression. They'll all have fire suppression systems as well.
attachment 2. Which is that one. Okay, so the last question is trash. I'm going to ask, so stop.
Gotta turn on my mic. Commissioner Popkin?
Thank you, Commissioner Pullen. Thanks for the proposal. I had a couple clarifying questions just to start us off. First of all, I was just curious if you could elaborate what those smaller structures are on the site plan here.
These here?
Yes, correct.
Those would be alley-served garages. So, you're entering from the back to a garage. This is just one configuration, but this is a possible.
Thank you. Are those at any point considered to be converted into like accessory dwelling units or other type of like ADU type structures?
I believe the city allows that.
Got it. So that would be at the property owner's choice.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. We already clarified. I just want to confirm on the record that the proposed plan is in fact connecting to Satisfaction Circle, right? That's what those two extensions are.
Right. Let me go back. There's, and I'm sorry we don't show the plan up here, but this is the property right here where the alley runs, and these are those stubs I was mentioning out to Satisfaction Circle.
And so, for lack of a better analogy, those are two Lego pieces that would fit together.
Quite well.
Thank you.
Pete and I have worked on this quite a while.
Noted. Can you explain then? I'm curious because that's intended to be a fairly substantial kind of street and connectivity there. I'm just curious if you could elaborate on your consideration for connecting this site plan to the public alley that's just west of the 4th and 5th filings. Like, why is that necessary?
There's a couple reasons. Refuse starts to become the priority here. Can you pick up garbage? And so they want easy access for all the garbage. It also creates another access point because there's already a driveway to a garage on lot 2, and this is already there, so this needs to extend. So it just made sense. I considered it like an emergency gated access or something that would be less accessible, but I think it's just good to have circulation all the way through and have that ease of access.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you just to clarify, the emergency gating you're proposing is kind of in that eastern part of that intersection there?
Yeah, I considered it, but we're not doing it.
Okay, so that would be an open access point.
I'm just responding. Yeah, that was other information.
No, that's helpful to know. And just to clarify, you're indicating that to allow for garbage and recycling pickup, that public alleyway access is necessary, even with the two access points already connecting to the proposed Satisfaction Circle extension?
Yes. I mean, yes, by all accounts from Public Works, by police, by the fire, and we don't mind it at all. So we just thought, let's just make it all connect.
Thank you. And just for planning staff, just wanted to confirm that that's accurate?
That is my understanding. And we have Public Works staff here as well. If I think I'm getting the thumbs up, that is accurate.
Great, thank you. Changing topics here, building on Commissioner Height's line of questioning, I was just curious, to what extent did you consider higher density, like multifamily units on this instead of single family?
The prior plan allowed mixed use within buildings even, and zero lot lines. We still have the zero lot lines, but you could have seen, attached townhomes, commercial on the ground floors. We just don't think that's a viable use here. And frankly, we didn't want to take away, I'm going back to my public planning days, take away from the village itself. It needs to be concentrated there. And so this activity was just not necessary in our thoughts on this parcel.
Can you elaborate what you mean by not necessary?
We didn't think the commercial uses here would be viable from a retail and commercial perspective.
How about from just a non-mixed use, but how about just a multifamily type use? 2-3 story type situation.
Like stack flats or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, we really didn't consider that because we didn't think it was that compatible on the edge here next to the farmhouse. And also to the west, where there's single family detached. So as you got away farther from the village core, we thought it made sense to address the street with walk-up stoops maybe and porches, the street being piked to the north, and to really kind of complete this appearance, knowing that this is the jewel on the corner, and the more we offset that with just porches, and then it has its porch, we thought it would really create good continuity. And the more we would add any commercial back to that, would take away from the livability of the square footages in the homes themselves.
Thanks for elaborating on that. You said you've been in touch with the Shaheen development and the team there, correct?
With Jack, sure.
Yeah, so, this commission approved the fourth filing back in our February meeting 2 months ago, and, one of the things that certainly would fit the character of that proposal or that site plan and extension there is multi-story type units as well, since that's part of that site plan. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. There's no question here. I'm thinking out loud given the kind of alignment of kind of single family versus multifamily and mixed use there. It seems like that certainly could be consistent with how the core is extending from the currently built part of Prospect to the extension that's planned to the fifth filing here. Okay, I'll come back to a few other questions in a moment. I'm just curious if you could also elaborate on why you're leaning towards, or why your preference is for a separate homeowners association.
There's a lot of reasons. I'm trying to think. Number one, it's a very small area. There's not a lot to take care of. And for us to be put in with the rest of Prospect seemed to be a scale issue, really, in terms of management and cost. We also have...
Sorry, isn't the economy of scale then really in favor of making them the same?
No, it's not. The reason it's not is that they have very little to take care of here, they being the future homeowners, and they would then be participating in a larger area of maintenance and so forth. So it doesn't, from a proportional perspective, they'll have very little to take care of. At one point, we considered it, and we also considered the architectural review, but we really feel it's better to have architectural review just within an HOA on this property, so that we can make sure the 5 homes come in the way we anticipate that they should and fit.
All right, thank you. Question for planning staff. Am I correct in assuming that the rest of the PUD, the first, second, third, fourth filings for the Wallace are all under the same homeowners association? Do we know that?
I don't know that for certain, but that is my understanding that there is a larger property owners association. Jack, do you have better information on that?
I'm really not sure of the fourth.
Okay.
I know that was a discussion that they had. I think it is, okay, but I'm not sure.
I'm getting a nod of a yes from the back that they are one.
Thank you. All right. I'll pause my questioning for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Popkin. I do have a couple clarifying questions, and this is in regard to the units per acre and the PDU. So it is then the understanding that because it's a PDU, they don't have to apply for a variance for the reduction, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I'm just going to give this as my thought. Has anybody, Jennifer, has anybody done a calculation for the 5 houses on the acreage they're at? What that comes out to, how many houses per acre? Because we've kind of put the onus on them that you have to have the historical farm, you have to move the buildings to it, and it's kind of taking up a large portion just for the barns and everything else, I'm looking at my quick calculations tells me that the 5 houses are on about 0.6 acres, 0.7 acres, and I'm thinking my quick math says that that does come in over 6 houses per acre then. Not to kind of, but that's my feeling of, I feel good then about approving it.
So we did not run the calculation for the 5 houses alone simply because we have to look at gross density. However, I would say that you're correct that each of the lots, the new single family lots that would not contain the farmhouse are roughly 4,500 square feet,
Okay.
which comes out to 9-ish units per acre.
Okay.
Just doing my quick and dirty 43,560 square feet per acre. So, so it would come in not including the alley or any common space. It would come in between 9 and 10.
Very good. Mr. Bestall, I have a quick question for you. Notice that, and I know you said it was conceptual, you showed that 4 out of the 5 houses have garages in the back. So basically the garages are going to be an option. Basically you can or don't have to put one.
I haven't thought of that. I think people will want garages, but yeah, there's not a requirement for a garage.
Okay.
Yeah. And I wanted to show the side one here just because that it could happen. These are ganged. In other words, there's side by sides here, which we think makes some sense, and it creates more open space in the backyards and so forth. But this is just one configuration that it could go.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I believe it's Commissioner Lukash.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions for staff. I noticed in one of the documents that there was a neighborhood input notification meeting. There's dates for when the sign was posted and mailed. But I am waiting on new glasses as well. I couldn't see the list of people that it was mailed to, and usually we get that and photos of the postings and all that. Am I missing it?
That would have been an oversight on my part. I do apologize for not including that.
Because we have to, when we approve this or review this, we need to make sure everything was met, including neighborhood input and all that. So I can verify that right now.
Chairman, members of the commission, there is an affidavit that I signed, and the city has that in their possession with the signs. Yes. And I think we sent 229, is 1,000 foot out to, for the public notice.
229 notices, like
envelopes.
Envelopes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I do apologize for that. We were having some technical difficulties with our systems when I was putting all of this together.
And the aforementioned affidavit, is that in here yet or is not?
It's in our record. It's on our system. So I don't know if the affidavit is in here. That was an oversight on my part. I do apologize. But we do have those we do have the affidavits and the notices and such in our files.
So I have a question for our attorney. Do we just trust that is in our files and in the city's files, or do we have to see that document?
It's a great question, Commissioner. Do we have it available? Perhaps we can supplement the record on the fly at this point and just include it with our packet, supplemental packet.
Okay. We can question that. Yeah, let's check that.
I'll look into it. If you want to continue with other questions on other issues, and we can come back to that. Thank you.
We have Jennifer actually looking for it. So
Okay,
she'll
yeah.
can get
I'll
into
let
our system.
I'll let her check on that, and maybe I can have the applicant, a question for the applicant. And I don't know if it's still there, but I know the lot had a fence along Pike that was just concrete blocks. I assume that will be gone.
You're missing them, or they're already gone?
Okay.
They've been gone.
I'm not missing
I think they
them.
were taken away last summer or last fall.
Okay.
And they have a new home around the fire station up in left hand near Jamestown.
Good. Yeah, I did. It was an eyesore.
We bought it that way, and it's amazing what they were trying to do with those things, but it was totally, it was goofy. I drove by there tonight. It just looks great, just cleaned out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the historic home, will it be a living home? People will live there, or will it be like an open house, like we have other historic
it'll
houses?
Be a private residence.
A private
I
residence.
beg your pardon, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
Okay. That is all for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Popkin?
Thank you, Commissioner Poland. A couple questions for the applicant. So sorry to make you get up again. Get your steps in today. The first review criteria for the commission here is that the application is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the purpose of the code and zoning district, and ... How does this proposal promote a more sustainable and resilient Longmont, as is the central vision of Envision Longmont, which is our comprehensive plan?
I think that fundamentally, sustainability takes many forms. We can talk about energy, we can talk about natural resources. In this case, we're talking about heritage. And this was a local landmark that was important. The survey was done, which defined what was the important aspects of it. And we're carrying that on. In fact, we're protecting it and creating a better context and doing things like cleaning up the area, so that I think that would be the primary sustainability element.
Can you elaborate on any other sustainability considerations for design for the new structures that you're building, other than the ones that are being relocated?
Well, I think I don't want to presuppose designs that aren't done already. But, certainly the world is turning to electric, all electric. Some of us are concerned about that. We're not sure that heat pumps are ready to perform at a level to keep us warm. But, all electric is something that I'm sure the city's looking for. We've participated pretty heavily on the zero carbon footprint goal that the city has in 2030. And I think you'll see the same thing in these homes when they're under design, and we'll be looking for that as they come through the design process that we'll have.
Are you referring to like the efficiency of design, the materials used?
Right.
Okay. I'd also love, this is part of or adjacent to two other filings two other plans in the Prospect Newtown neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on how this proposal aligns with new urbanism principles, which would be consistent with other parts of the Prospect neighborhood?
Several. I mentioned them earlier. The T&D aspects would be they face the street. There's porches. They're walkable. They are. There's a variation in side yard setback, which is also kind of a hallmark of T&D development. Specifically, I like to look at Kohler, Wisconsin, the company town that had a variation of size of building, lot, and setback. They're alley served. So those are the ones I think that would be most. I think the design guidelines themselves, you saw those, are specifically tied to both traditional and derivative architecture, which most of it is very applicable for T&D type context.
All right, thank you. Are you familiar with Longmont's beneficial building electrification plan?
Yes, I am.
Great. You mentioned you mentioned briefly that before that all electric construction was considered or given some thought. Did you do any kind of study or analysis to determine whether that's a part of the design or should be part of the design yet?
Well, we're doing that in almost all my projects on the Front Range. We haven't started that process here because we're just hoping to get a plat approved. If we get lots, then we'll do houses, or we'll have someone come in and do the houses, and that's when that will kick in. But, if I'm sure you know that most jurisdictions in one way or another are, for example, I'm doing a couple of projects in Denver. They're way out over their skis on energy. I was just thinking today, my thesis in...
No, can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Just for everyone's clarity and understanding. I mean, I know what skis are, but I think in this context.
Well, when you're way out over your skis, you may not know where you're going to land. You can...
No, I understand the expression, but yeah. What is that actually referring to in terms of what Denver's trying to do?
It's referring to a project that I'm doing in Denver. I have a couple going on right now, and they have extensive energy requirements, which are, I could discuss that for a long time. I'm particularly interested in them because some of the things that they're requiring, are untested and or they need to be progressive. In other words, if you start with, an energy efficient boiler, for example, at the lowest level, in year 15, you still need to comply with whatever the code says then. So that's why I think that's way out over your skis, trying to be able to predict what the technology is most useful and what's going to reduce the carbon footprint the most. Mm-hmm. I have a particular interest in this because in architecture school, my thesis was on passive systems and active systems. And it was a while ago, a couple of years is the way I see it, but so I've always had an active interest in this. And I just wonder sometimes if, are we really getting energy conservation? Are we really reducing carbon footprint? Or are we just really loading things up and making design more complex? So that's my thought of out over your skis.
Appreciate the elaboration of that. I mean, by nature of new construction, you're adding to carbon footprint. So my question is how, when we're thinking about kind of the sustainability overall as it relates to Envision Longmont and the guiding principles there. And so when I think about how do we start to evaluate, how sustainable something is, it's a function of the materials, the building design, the site layout, the urbanism principles that we were talking about before. Recently, as you're probably aware, well, you indicated you were aware of the beneficial building electrification plan that the city passed.
Sure.
In that the city stated that it recognizes the need to act and has committed to assertive climate action and greenhouse gas emissions reductions on several fronts, including energy efficiency in buildings, carbon-free and alternative modes of transportation, waste reduction, and 100% renewable electricity. Beneficial building electrification supports the commitment to reducing emissions and combined with other activities will help the city make progress towards its goal. That's on page 5 if you wanted to refer to it. And the plan continues on page 6. Building electrification is recognized as essential to building decarbonization and wider climate action, generally coming in second only to renewable energy and or transportation electrification when it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. As Longmont's power supply grows cleaner, identifying pragmatic ways to electrify building systems and appliances will help to drive down cost, transform the market, and scale adoption for better indoor air quality and health, efficiency, and fewer emissions from buildings in the community. In fact, this commission, in our February 2023 meeting, staff noted that applicants and developers are not required to connect to both electric and gas utilities. In fact, only electric is required, gas is a choice. And so I guess my question for you is, would you be opposed to constructing this to be an all-electric development consistent with city plans? It's a relatively small plan as it is.
What I heard was the city has given us a choice. I think
Correct.
That's what, yeah. So I'm for choice, and because I think that's the best value engineering at the time of the design of the building, the amount of insulation it has, et cetera. But I'm obviously most interested in reducing the carbon footprint, and so that would be, I don't feel we're at that stage in this project. Is that?
I appreciate that response. I'll ask my question again. Would you be opposed to constructing this to be all electric, consistent with city plans? I know it's not required.
I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I wouldn't commit to it tonight if that's what you're asking.
Understood. That is what I was asking. Thank you.
and so you can be direct with me.
Yeah.
Just ask me. I think it's just premature. If you really take design seriously, it's not a checklist. And what you're looking for is a real good approach to the overall design of each building. And in most cases, all electric's great, but we don't know until we get there, and until we have really good mechanical and electrical HVAC engineers really involved. And it's really a systems process and value engineering effort that we would go through, and we take it seriously. So
I appreciate you taking that seriously. I'll just note for the record here that most likely it would be the most efficient way to consider whether that makes sense kind of upfront when you're really starting to embark on the design process, which I know is not now, but would be subsequent. And that would be when you would look at high efficiency design, when you would look at all electric versus gas-based infrastructure construction. So it does feel pretty fitting that this is a relevant conversation to have, given that really the next stage would be design, and that I would suppose that it would be more cost efficient to plan with that in mind, if you were considering that at all. Question for staff. You can take a seat. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Question for whomever would like to answer from staff. Aside from the approved Wallace 4th filing residential units, which the commission approved back in February of this year, are there other residential communities or developments that have been planned or built in Longmont that are all electric residential units?
Sure. So give me one moment while I pull the information.
Thank you. And just for the record, this was a question that I submitted via email to staff, which I believe the commission received in terms of the question, but not the response.
Yes, and I late this afternoon did receive information from Hannah Mulroy, who is one of the sustainability coordinators at Longmont Power. She has indicated that all new single-family homes that are under construction by Habitat for Humanity are all electric currently. In terms of existing electric developments, staff has anecdotal evidence of all electric developments in Longmont, but they have not yet done a formal inventory. Platte River somewhat recently developed a list of all electric homes targeted for rebate outreach, but there were really just a couple hundred single-family homes, and no note was made whether they were adjacent to one another or not. They are anticipating that future data will come out that they will be able to use to identify all electric homes or businesses. In terms of proposed, the proposed development that primarily comes to mind is Modern West, which is currently going through entitlement processes. Modern West 1, I know, has gone through some of the preliminary, I think they've gone through public hearings. We're working with them currently to figure out some of their off-site public improvement plans as they move through that process. Modern West 2, which is the north of that particular property. This is over near the airport, over Rogers Road, Airport Road area. So Modern West 2 is currently has submitted for a concept plan amendment so that they can move forward through that planning process. There is another townhome development that was mentioned. I don't have a name of the project, but it's being proposed that would be all electric with the EV chargers in each garage. And they've got a few other all electric concepts they've seen in pre-application, but they haven't moved forward through the development process. So we're seeing it. We don't have, the records aren't necessarily there for the older developments because this really is something that's fairly new to the radar in terms of sustainability goals.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I will reserve my time for now. Thank you.
Jennifer, I believe you have information on the notification.
You can do that as well. That would be great. So Mr. Bestall does have a copy on his screen as well. I'm looking at affidavits in my on our digital files stating that the notices were sent on, as noted, July 23rd, 2022, with a 1,000-foot radius map and approximately 3 pages of mailing labels at 30 labels per page. Yeah, we aren't able to, unfortunately, because we aren't able to get it to the email and stuff. And again, I do apologize for the oversight.
No problem. While they are getting the thumb drive all loaded, I'm going to go ahead, and I believe Commissioner Goldberg is next.
Mr. Chairman, I do have an answer for your question if we have a brief moment.
Sure.
Thanks. I believe it was Commissioner Height who gave us the correct answer previously, but under the code section 1502.040J8, the commission only needs to consider adequacy of notice if it's questioned during the hearing.
Okay.
So I think best practice would indicate we should include it in the packet going forward, but since it only is triggered if there's a question about it, the commission doesn't need to make a determination about the adequacy.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. No, we don't need it. We're good. Everyone.
I think we should gather decorum of our meeting here.
Oh, we're going to put it up on the screen? No? Okay. Okay, good. We can move forward. Commissioner Goldberg.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. Thanks, Jane, and thanks to the applicant for navigating that scenario. Do you prefer Jennifer or Ms. Hewitt-Apperson?
Jennifer's fine.
Okay, Jennifer, thanks.
It's less cumbersome.
I'm not going to confirm or deny that, but thank you. Jennifer works great for me. Hey, Jennifer, did this project before us undergo the DRC, the review committee?
Yes.
In that process?
Yes, all of our projects go through the DRC process.
Yeah. Is one of those items kind of proving that it aligns to Envision Longmont? Or maybe, is that maybe a secondary review that you complete?
So in terms of the alignment with the Envision Longmont, I will have to say that was something that would have been done during the final development plan amendment process, which happened 1.5 project managers before me.
Okay.
So realistically, I'm the third planner who has not just worked on this particular project, but in terms of the process. So, but that would have been handled at the FDP amendment process.
Okay. When I see things like this project embraces a compact and efficient pattern of growth, promotes a sustainable mix of land uses, maintains and enhances the character of established neighborhoods, and focuses on infill. What part of the review committee is that, or review process is that?
That would be planning. That would be the planning review. Cool. So it would be less involved with the the engineering and public safety staff, and that really falls under the planning review.
Cool. And then do you stand by the information that your team put together, and calling out these scenarios where the project meets these goals?
I would say so.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We continue to read, there's other parts of the review criteria that talks about the project being compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, meeting city standards, not adversely affecting surrounding neighborhoods and those sort of things. I think what's clear to me is your team reviewed all of that review criteria and didn't have any red flags.
Correct.
I think additionally, you offered in your packet the kind of justification as to this is a bit of a weird project. It has this kind of unique approach with a overall development plan and final development plans that kind of serve that goal. But the applicant in this project before us has kind of followed those steps properly. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I would say too, in addition to this being a unique project, in terms of the overall prospect plan, this particular parcel is particularly unique because of the historic landmark component.
Sure. I think that touches on something that we can get to now. I think it's important to notice that the applicant seemed to work cooperatively with the Historic Preservation Commission, right? I think they had a couple different criteria they had to meet. They had to get approval one time, and then a year later had to meet that burden, and they did check those boxes. Is that accurate?
Correct. And then they also went one step further, which the original certificate of appropriateness did not require that they amend the landmark designation. That was something in working with staff that we determined would really make sense just from a housekeeping standpoint, for lack of a better way of putting it, just to make sure it was perfectly clear that the landmark status applied to the structures and not the larger property as a whole, because that distinction can get important at times.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I did want to follow up on a question from Commissioner Height. Can you confirm that the various access pathways here can accommodate the emergency vehicles? I know the applicant's really close to Mark Sampson, but did your team confirm that it meets all the requirements there?
Mark is a member of our DRC, and he would not sign off on any project that he could not get his trucks and aerial apparatus through.
And he signed off on this?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I think that kind of brings us down to what's left is really our concern with the density. And it is kind of funny to be here talking about, approving something that's below the minimum density. Given our discussions over previous months, we've been advocating for higher density kind of across the board. But I really share the, point of view that our chairman had, which is, we should look at this a little bit more, case by case. Yes, this historic lot 6, I think, is taking up a bunch of the space, and the other 5 are kind of smaller lots. And so when you do the math, they're actually pretty dense. They're kind of meeting the goal. Do you agree?
I would say so. Lot 6 is more than 3 times the size of the standard lot in this particular in this proposed subdivision. In fact, it's nearly 4 times the size of your standard. These lots are 4,500 square feet, and then you have lot 6, which is substantially larger, and that really is to accommodate continued preservation of these historic structures. And so the size of lot 6 really does drive down the overall density of this particular subdivision.
Cool. As I reflect on some of our conversations in the past as we were looking closer at code and, kind of staging from, this height to this height to this height, in various scenarios, I did buy into the applicant's argument that there is some staging going on here with these kind of larger lots out closer to the main road, and as you get to the heart of this really wonderful and dynamic prospect, growing in density and really realizing its new urban potential. So I kind of bought into that. So I guess as I look around at my peers here, I don't have a problem. I guess I don't have a big problem with this project. I think the applicant has done a good job to meet the needs of the historic landmark, to use this space, to use this lot wisely. He's worked collaboratively with the existing HOA or the Prospect Owners Association. I guess maybe I'm assuming that. Can you confirm what was the feedback from the Prospect Owners Association, or did they confirm that Mr. Bestall has been working collaboratively with them?
So we do have, there is information in the packet going back to the FDP amendment, and that's really where they put in their comments relating
One was about appropriate utilities.
Right. So the fifth filing, there was feedback back in 2021. That's really the last official information we received from them. So yeah, there has been a lot of coordination going on with this project, both especially with the fourth filing.
And you haven't had any unusual communications from them about how they hate this project or this is incompatible in any way?
I have not received anything.
And they were invited to be here tonight if there was any major problem or if they found this to be incompatible.
They were included in the formal notice, yes.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of reasons to approve this project. I think the applicant brought, a good project that is using this land wisely. Sure, I share some of Commissioner Popkins' passion for creating more sustainable property. I certainly see an opportunity to push harder for higher density, or we could certainly weave in a reason not to approve it because it didn't quite hit 6 dwelling units per acre. But I think if we take a step back, actually this is serving the community well and meeting the overall goals of this part of our town. So I don't have any problems with it. I'm not ready to require or mandate the applicant to go all electric. I don't really see that as my role to enforce right now. So I look forward to hearing from the rest of the commissioners, but I'd be inclined to support this project.
Thank you. Commissioner Popkin.
Thank you, Commissioner Pullen. I appreciate the passion and clarity that Commissioner Goldberg always brings to the conversation. Thank you. In slight disagreement, though, I will note that many who have worked on and many hours and time and focus that has been devoted to the consideration of electrification in the community has stated in the electrification plan on page 6. Get that right. Correct, page 6. States at the top, electrification is necessary and imminent. And while that is not a policy requirement currently in the code or approved as a policy for all new construction, it is worth taking serious consideration of as a commission, thinking about approving new development and new construction that will last for hopefully longer than multiple decades, if designed correctly. These properties, this plan, as well as any other plan that comes before this commission, should be built with sustainability and longevity in mind. And it is always more costly to convert properties to electric rather than build them from the start. I also disagree with the applicant's take on the state of the industry in terms of air and ground source heat pumps. They have improved significantly. And while I don't want to require a certain exact technology or product be used, I do feel it necessary to reflect when we think about the sustainability of this, when we think about how that really is the central vision of Envision Longmont, how we factor in the considerations for sustainability here. And high efficient electric construction is considered really the gold standard now of new residential development. And we have seen multiple examples in our own community already on that front. So with that said, and Jane, I've emailed you the text for this condition I would like to introduce here very recently. So if you haven't checked your email in the last 5 minutes, you would not have seen it. Or if you don't have access to it there, just if it's easy for the minutes and notes or to put up on the screen. So with that, I'd like to introduce one condition here for this 5th filing. Approval is contingent upon all electric construction in alignment with the City of Longmont's beneficial building electrification plan and the central vision of sustainability in Envision Longmont, pending no objections from Longmont Power and Communications. Is there another?
Commissioner Popkin,
Yes.
is that along with, so I guess to make this easier, are you putting forward PZR 2023-3B with the condition that the city had and then with your condition?
Correct. This is a supplemental condition.
Okay. But you're motioning for that then?
Correct. Okay. I am motioning to approve, I'm motioning to approve with the...
Approve 2023B with your 2 conditions.
Point of parliamentary procedure. With that motion, force a vote from the commission on the actual, on just the condition or the entire project with those 2 conditions if approved?
I would be looking for the entire project with the two conditions. Now, what I would say is, I think this is proper. You put forth the motion, and then we'll see if we get a second. If we get a second, we'll vote on it. If not, then we can have further discussion. If you don't want to put forward the motion, then we can have the discussion without the motion being made.
Appreciate that. I would like to indicate to the commission that I intend to advance that motion at a certain point with that condition, not at this time, so that the commission can ask questions of staff, the applicant, and myself, and we can have a discussion on that as needed.
Thank you.
So for now, I share my intention of introducing that. I appreciate the clarification of procedure, as this is my second meeting. Thank you. So that is the intention. I don't intend it in any way, shape, or form to be onerous on the applicant. I don't think it is. As we heard from the applicant himself, he is working on multiple projects that do involve all-electric construction. It is feasible, it is tested, it is deployed in our community already, or planned to be deployed in our community. And frankly, it's one of the key ways that we can help ensure that this new proposal here is aligned with the central sustainability vision of Envision Longmont. One second. A question for staff on a different topic. In our packet, there was a letter from some residents that described some of the access points and the traffic flows, and we started to get into that discussion earlier, just about kind of the vehicle flows, the use of the public alley, and I was just interested in if you could share, for the record here, kind of what some of the concerns were from the residents that did submit that for the record.
Sure. I think the question really was, what was the access to be? The one resident letter I am looking at. Let's see. Primary one was questions about what the access would be, mitigation for increased traffic, and ultimately, we're talking about 5 additional new homes, and that's really a de minimis amount of traffic when it comes to.
Sorry, let me clarify. It was less about the induced traffic here, and more, or the planned and expected traffic, and more about the traffic flows.
The traffic flows.
In terms of, I believe
Sure.
in the packet there were some concerns from some neighboring residents about
Sure.
the use of the public alley and how that relates to the 4th and 5th filings.
Sure. So I think they were concerned primarily with that westernmost north-south alley spur, and the applicant has demonstrated primary access would be from the southern points off of that new east-west alley down to Satisfaction Circle. So really that alley that is used by the Christie Court residents effectively would be access for trash and emergency. It wouldn't be a primary access point for the residents. It would continue to be used in the same way that it is.
Got it. And just to clarify, that's the opinion of you and maybe the other review.
That's our understanding.
Yeah.
That's our understanding.
One of the proposals, I think, in their letter was considering, if indeed the Satisfaction Circle is extended and connected to that public alley as a part of the 4th plat, which I know is not what we're discussing officially here, potentially converting that alley into a one-way street just to kind of control a little bit of the flow there for the residents. I am sympathetic to the argument and kind of concerns that they're raising, and I'm wondering if that kind of a one-way alley consideration is abhorrent to city staff's consideration and the review there.
I'm going to have to just defer to Mr. Sherman, who is on our engineering side. My understanding is one way isn't necessarily better or worse than two-way. It would be built to two-way standards.
The existing alley would be built to two-way standards?
The existing alley would not be a primary access. The existing alley would continue to function. The primary access would be from that east-west alley. The one running east-west on the south side.
So we're talking about two alleys here, right? There's the alley that's running east to west and the alley that's running north to south. That's just west of the fourth and fifth plats.
Yes, so the alley that's running north to south was the one that was referenced
Correct.
in the previous letters. That's not intended to change. That's intended to remain as essentially a service alley. But the primary access for these parcels would be from the southern points on Satisfaction Circle.
Good evening, Commission. Josh Sherman, Civil Engineer with Public Works. I try to understand the question, I think, completely. First of all, my understanding with some of these alleys within this PUD and within Wallace is that they serve actually by defunct as a street.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be an example here with the east-west running alley in the sense that, you know, if you were coming to visit one of these homes on these lots, you would use this alley as your primary access. Whereas if you think maybe about Old Town or something like that, and if you were going to visit a home in Old Town, you might not necessarily use the alley as the primary point of access for one of those lots if you did not live there. So, you know, just an example as a way that I think that within this PUD that the alleys are somewhat serve as a function as a street. So I'm not sure if I understand the question with regard to which one you're asking about being a one-way or consideration as a one-way. Is it the north-south or the east-west?
Yeah, to clarify, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, from the letter submitted by concerned residents of Christie Court it was referring to the north-south alley, the public alley that currently exists, that they were concerned about the bi-directional traffic there.
Okay.
If Satisfaction Circle is extended and connected to both alleys.
Sure. I think in this case that alley does serve as a bit of two-way traffic today in terms of those residents that need to enter and exit from that location. So again, as Jennifer stated, I don't know that the intent is to change that function.
Chairman, Mr. Poplin. Yeah, the north-south is a two-way, and there's a number of garages that are on that people come north and then head south on. So, you know, we're talking about maybe averaging 8.5, 9 trips a day for the 6 units we have on that, and it doesn't seem to merit one way. You know, the flexibility of being able to move in different directions is probably more valid in terms of relieving any possible congestion, but we just don't, like I think has been pointed out, we just don't have the density to create any traffic concerns.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I will reserve the balance of my time.
Commissioner Flagg.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Michael. It's getting late for me. I'm sorry. I've been up for a long time. One of the things that I think we're here to do, and perhaps Jennifer, you can verify this for me, we are here to conditionally approve of a plat filing.
That is correct.
And Jennifer, what would that include approving?
So we are looking at approving the preliminary plat. So essentially conceptual lot lines, conceptual access, etc. This would then guide the final plat, which is...
And so that includes things like plumbing.
Utilities, utility access, easements, etc. So the final plat is really where you know, the rubber hits the road, so to speak, and all of the easements are lined out and you know, depicted very clearly. This is really this is where we're moving. This is the direction we're headed, you know, conceptually, in terms of number of lots, general layout, general access, proposed development types.
So there is more work that is going to be done by both the developer and staff.
Correct.
And this is in terms of more detail on the plat. Well, this is just the bare bones, the skeleton sort of on which we're going to place all the houses after they have been thought about in terms of design. And there's a design committee, And my understanding from reading everything and listening tonight is that historic committee for the city of Longmont has looked at this and been in touch and in conversations, which most likely will continue as needed before this thing goes through complete final development. Is that correct?
I'd say that's accurate. As part of the final plat, there are also public improvement plans that are evaluated and under review, and those really include the nitty gritty of what direction your drainage is flowing, where your sewer and water lines are, where your electrical lines are, and things of that nature. That's really where the very detailed work is done. This is really more high level in terms of concept, in terms of density, general layout. Is it consistent generally with the area, with our larger standards?
Okay, so basically this is a concept. It's not the final.
That's correct.
And we talk about public hearings, and we talk about how the structure is going to look.
Mm-hmm.
So since this is a preliminary plat, I'm not comfortable with proceeding into design guidelines on behalf of the city. And that includes how the houses will be powered. My personal opinion on the powering issues is that we still don't know enough every place, everywhere, for everything. And we will learn going forth, and there may be an innovation that shows up in 2 months, and we'll say, this is grand, or not. But tonight, that's not our purview. Am I correct in stating that, basically?
I would say it's not inaccurate. I will let Glenn elaborate. Mr. Van Milligan.
You can certainly make that recommendation. I think what I wanted to weigh in on is typically, like Envision, it's a plan, it's a policy, but we implement it through the building code or the land development code. So I think Commissioner Popkin's correct. He's reading from a goal of the cities, and we are starting that process of amending the codes, but we're not there yet. So I would say you're maybe skipping a step of the public process of adopting the building code to put the electrification in place.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So my thought is that we go forward. I support this plat. I support PZR 2023 3B as it's written right now. And I'm hoping the other commissioners will join me.
Thank you. And Jennifer, we will get one more swing at this then when they come out with the final plat, right?
Final plat is administrative.
Nope.
This
administrative.
is
Okay, this
correct.
is it. Okay.
Yep. Preliminary plat is where the public hearing happens.
Okay. Commissioner Height.
I am speaking into the microphone. I'm still hung up on density. It's the applicant's obligation to demonstrate that the application meets standards. I have not seen the PUD or the ODP for Prospect for the Wilds Edition. If our code provides that if the PUD allows for this skirting of the density, our code says otherwise. 1503.060. That unless set forth in the PUD, all standards of our development code have to be complied with by the PUD. I don't see that there's an exception to that in the materials that were presented to us tonight, because I do note that 1503.080.3A3 says that in the residential mixed neighborhood, density is between 6 and 8, and they're at 5. That same code also, the PUD requirements also provide that the minimum lot size in the PUD is 4,000 square feet. There are 4,500 square feet for 5 of their 6 lots. There's room to move. They could potentially make the density standard work. But absent that, and absent a variance, and absent demonstration that the PUD or the Wallace Edition allows them to have this divergence in the minimum density, I can't approve this program. Further, even though it's moot, Commissioner Popkin. I will note that still in the United States as of February 2023, 60% of electricity is still generated by fossil fuels. 19% of that 60% is by coal. 39% of that 60% is by natural gas. Forcing, in my opinion, forcing a standard of development, regardless that it might be inapposite at this stage of the development procedure, I don't think is wise. So even though the city is looking at a goal of going to all electric buildings, I think making that a requirement might be a big mistake. Thanks.
Commissioner Popkin.
Thank you, Commissioner Poland. I very much respect the opinions of my fellow commissioners here, Goldberg, Height, and Flake. That said, I would like to point us to the, actually, in response to Commissioner Height's point there, I take mild issue with the overall power generation being a relevant consideration here. I recognize that power in the United States is generated from a number of different sources, some of which is renewable, some of which is fossil-based, and that actually bears little resemblance, in my opinion, here as to whether this particular development should be a certain type of construction in terms of the utilities here. To Jennifer's point before, the utilities are a factor in our consideration right now. And what I will point out for my fellow commissioners is by not considering the motion I intend to introduce momentarily, we are actually shifting the cost burden of electrification over to future residents. And it is objectively more expensive to shift and convert existing construction from gas to electric than it is to build all electric from the start. In fact, it can be virtually cost neutral depending on the exact climate, market, and project that you design it to. So from my perspective, I think we should seriously give consideration not just to the goal, but actually the goal is already approved by City Council in the electrification plan. It's just not a requirement in our code yet. So the goal has been stated and approved, and we know that is the direction the city is moving towards. And so I would like to remind the commission, and while each commissioner is entitled to his or her own opinion here, I would like to recognize the acknowledgments from the Longmont electrification plan, which states that this work, or the plan, was made possible with contributions from the City of Longmont staff, community and industry stakeholders, and leaders from peer communities. The city convened a building electrification feasibility committee tasked with guiding and informing the planning process and the plan content, focused on community and equity priorities, workforce considerations, communication strategies, and implementation details. The committee comprised the following individuals representing city staff and a variety of sectors within the community. I won't read the entire list right now, but I would encourage you to take a look on page 2 of the Beneficial Building Electrification Plan. So while I respect your own individual opinions, there's already been a serious effort in the city to not only think about what the goal might be, but actually to state a direction, to make it very clear the direction that the city intends to move, and has outlined effectively an implementation plan. Now, while that is not, and I recognize 100% that is not a requirement, we should be absolutely thinking about the requirement that we do have before us, which is compliance with Envision Longmont. And the central vision of all of the 6 guiding principles in Envision Longmont actually are sustainability and resilience. And so when we think about how do we operationalize that, how do we act on that, how do we really truly represent that in the projects, when I look at this project here and when we start to have these considerations, I see a project where there's a lack of consideration to really modern technology at this point, and frankly, a less sustainable project than we could be encouraging at this point. While we are not a policy-making body, the policy is Envision Longmont. And so we are following the direction of those before us who have established, including many on the commission here, who have written, consulted, advised on sustainability and resilience being the guiding principles and central vision of Envision Longmont. So I don't intend to try to get ahead of any technology. I don't believe I am. I don't intend to require a specific technology, rather requiring a simple condition here on the type of technologies to be considered. There are, for those less familiar with electrification strategies, there are air and ground source heat pumps, geothermal considerations. Frankly, any electric building should be to be maximally sustainable and least cost as high efficient as possible. But I will leave that exact design for the consideration and review. My intention here, actually, simply stated, is to align with review criteria 1, and frankly, to help give clarity to the next stages of this process, such that, frankly, we don't waste time thinking about something that the city hopes to be outdated, and as already stated, is not the direction the city of Longmont intends to move. And so my hope here is that we just give clarity to staff, the applicant, who is already admitted to working on these types of projects before, and recognize just neighboring to this in the 4th plat, hundreds of units of all-electric residential construction. So we might have personal opinions on the efficacy of that technology, but there are those who have already provided, and this commission has actually already approved, multiple all-electric residential developments far more substantial than this one. So my suggestion here is that we continue to follow that lead, and lead by example, and follow really what the central vision of Envision Longmont is, and the proposals that have come before this commission before that represent that. So I don't intend to chastise any individual commissioner here for their personal opinion or understanding of the technology, rather following the lead of those who have already set this forward, be it in the planning process for the beneficial building electrification plan, Envision Longmont itself, and frankly some really creative developments that we have seen proposed between Modern West, the 4th filing here, and a few other projects that have already come before us, including Habitat for Humanity's, all of their new future considerations, as Jennifer so alluded to and described before. So I actually don't think what I'm proposing is quite radical at all. I think it very much is in alignment with everything that the city is intending to do or has already committed to. And while that is not a hard and fast requirement for every development, in fact, I voted to approve a mixed electric and gas development before in the 4th filing in the last meeting. That was gas for commercial and all electric residents. I think we should continue, unless otherwise told, to consider this on a case-by-case basis, and I believe I am in this situation. And as such, I do not think this is actually setting a policy, but rather helping implement existing plans and Envision Longmont along the way. And I would encourage the commission to consider it that way as well.
Commissioner, are you?
We'll reserve. Thank you.
Commissioner Teta.
I appreciate Commissioner Popkins' opinions about that, but I don't believe that's our purview to dictate how the power should be. The applicant has indicated that he hasn't decided and that he'd be willing to consider all options. As to the density, I think that I like the density, and I think in combination with the already approved but as yet unbuilt 4th filing, we're going to have plenty of density. So I have no issue with the lack of density here in the 5th filing.
Commissioner Lukash.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to put on the record that staff earlier, they found the list of mailings, and I was fine with that. And perhaps in the future we can make sure it's attached in the packet. I want to touch on the electric proposal. Personally, I embrace electric. We have an electric vehicle in our family. We subscribe to the Platte River electricity for the wind energy. So personally, and as a homeowner, I embrace it, but I cannot feel that I can enforce it on others, on other developments right now. Definitely, I appreciated the plans that have been brought to us that embrace electricity. But I don't think right now I can agree with that. I would love to see public comment on that, the public input. And for that, maybe when we look at some code change or some policies, we can have public comment on that and see where our residents want to go as well. That's my comment on that.
Commissioner Popkin?
Thank you, Commissioner Poland. I very much, again, respect the opinions of my fellow commissioners, Tata and Lukacs. I do want to clarify, and I think it would be useful for this body to keep in mind that this is not a requirement of actually what power is serving this facility or these structures. And it's an important distinction to think about here. It's not a question of renewable or fossil for actually the power that's provided. It's a question of what is used for heating and what is used for, because the power itself is actually coming from Longmont Power and Communications, LPC, and they have a wide mix of power that they are slowly shifting to. I believe currently the vision is 100% by 2030, if I understand what the City Council has approved in the past. But I would welcome anyone to correct me on that. But the intention is to shift towards entirely renewable, but that's not what this motion would be. It would not be requiring the type of power. There's no requirement that solar panels be added to this. There's no requirement that this only be served by wind or only be served by gas or coal. That's not even the question. The question is, what are the type of utility infrastructure hookups that are providing the type of fuel here? And so when we think about electrification, typically for the average residential homeowner or renter, that is heating for cooking, so stove, whether it's gas or electric, that is heating for hot water or heating for air. And those are really the types of uses that natural gas is used in residential dwellings. And so it's important to think about because there's added infrastructure that is built up front that this commission would be signing off on if we don't consider this motion. And as a result, that does pass, as I said before, the cost burden to implement the city's public process plan, in slight disagreement with my fellow commissioner to my right here. There has been a public process already, and while it's not on a policy, it's not on a code requirement, it has been on the strategic direction of where the city is headed. And that is not uncommon with many other cities that are trying to lead on climate action, equity, and affordability. And so when we think about equity and affordability and in this transition on electrification, the cost burden is either upfront, which I've already stated before is not really a burden when you just design it appropriately from the get-go. We're actually passing really what is not a cost burden now over to a cost burden for the future owners of these properties to then convert from gas to electric, whether it is an encouragement later on or a requirement in the future. Can't prognosticate as to how that will go, but one way or another, the future property owners here are going to, if they are considering that shift, will bear the burden of that cost. So I would encourage each commissioner here, whether you feel comfortable requiring this as a policy or not, which I already stated is not the intention here. The question is to consider this on a case-by-case basis, as we did in the last commission hearing, and as this commission has considered before with prior proposals. What makes sense for the neighborhood, what makes sense for the site, and what makes sense really for the utility infrastructure here. We can go ahead and approve this without the motion I intend to make in a moment, seeing no other immediate speakers. However, that is shifting the cost burden if gas infrastructure is indeed what is planned at this point. And frankly, I don't think that's fair to future residents that we want to be living here who consider sustainability, resilience, and equity as part of the vision and values that I think the city has committed to on multiple occasions. We may be slightly uncomfortable requiring this as a policy. Again, it's not that. We may be slightly uncomfortable with just discussing and approving it with that condition at this stage, which I would understand that discomfort. This is from what I'm aware of, a relatively new conversation in this commission. That said, the intention here is not to come out of nowhere with this, but rather to build on the backs of those who contributed to the beneficial building electrification plan. And it was a lot of folks that went into that. Again, not to come out with an abject policy requirement, but to really indicate the direction of where the city is headed for Longmont Power and Communications planning purposes, for developers planning purposes, and for the community's planning purposes and understanding. And so, with respect, I think overall this is a pretty good project. I think there are I understand Commissioner Height's questions regarding the density. I appreciate Commissioner Poland's comments on the density factor relative to the historic structures. I think this is a unique situation from that standpoint as well. And I very much respect the intention of the applicant, frankly, to be building something that fits into the Prospect neighborhood here. And so with that, I don't think there's much more to say or change here. I think it overall is a logical proposal. I think it will make effective use of that space. I might wish there's a little bit more density in terms of, relating to that, but, that is something that we have to weigh and relative to the surrounding properties and a lot of other factors that would influence that, including the ability for traffic factors that would come if we did make it increasingly dense there, or doubled or tripled that if it was a multifamily type property. So there are a lot of factors that go into the density. I respect that. I think the applicant is generally well intended with the proposal, and has stated himself that he intends to explore different technologies. I'm hoping to use this as an opportunity to clarify what should be looked at. And given that residential properties across the city of Longmont have been approved to be all electric, I don't see any real issue there, especially considering that this is really aligned, truly aligned with the fact that electrification, as stated in the plan that City Council reviewed and approved last fall, as being necessary and imminent. So with that, I would like to make a motion to approve with that, I would like to make a motion to approve PZR 2023-3B with the staff recommended condition, as well as the condition that I shared earlier, but I will reread that just for everyone's benefit and understanding. The approval is contingent upon all electric construction in alignment with the City of Longmont's beneficial building electrification plan and the central vision of sustainability in Envision Longmont, pending no objections from Longmont Power and Communications.
Very good. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Flagg?
I think it's been the...
We have to first go through, when we get back, we first have to verify if there's a second for the motion or not. There's a motion on, and that's what we have to resolve first. Do we have a second? We do not have a second, so then the motion fails. Now we're back to discussion. Commissioner Flagg.
Has usually been the policy or the tradition or what we have done to, when you add a condition, to do it separately into the PZR. So if you want to offer an additional condition, then we should add that separately as one of the conditions. So we have one condition. You're asking for us to agree to a second condition. So you must make, I would think, that motion.
No.
And my suggestion would be to make that motion, have that discussed.
Yeah, point of personal privilege. I respect Commissioner Flagg entirely and was trying to clarify that exact process previously such that we didn't run into this discussion. So if in any way that is not the preferred process, I apologize, because the goal was to really, if possible, take a vote solely on that condition for the purposes of discussion. My understanding from the commission, from the chairman before, was that that was not the process.
Jeremy?
I think, in my opinion, I think that was the proper process of adding the condition on to the staff condition and voting on that resolution as one package with both conditions. I think we could have done it separately as well, but I think that was the cleanest way of having it with the staff, in my opinion. Commissioner.
Oh, Commissioner.
In the past, though, we have done it so that we don't end up with a situation where we're not discussing the whole thing. So one of the things that we've done, and I know I've offered conditions previously, we've discussed them and agreed or disagreed to add them. And then I think we did that maybe 2 sessions ago, actually, with a condition that was offered up, and the commission discussed it and then did not agree to add that into the entire recommendation.
I think in general that's what we did. We discussed, he brought forth, he was going to put forth, we did discuss it, he put forth the motion, and basically by us not having a second, that was a way to say that it was not an accepted condition.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I'll be happy to look into that issue, Chairman Flake, just to address it for the next next meeting. But I think we're fine for this procedural meeting on my legal opinion.
Commissioner Popkin?
Yeah, point of personal privilege there again on this. I actually would have preferred Commissioner Flake's approach because I didn't want to in any way shut down any other fellow commissioners from proposing conditions or considerations before this body. So I hope we can look into this because I actually very much respect the intention of what you were going for and was trying to do the same. With that, I would, because of that misunderstanding, I would like to call the previous, I would like to, I don't know if it's called the point of parliamentary procedure. Would it be called the previous question to vote on the same, or motion the same amendment or consideration? I just want to make sure that none of the other fellow commissioners were confused on that point when discussing how we were approaching this. I'd hate for process to get in the way of substance.
I think if there's a question concerning substance, I think it's in the board's discretion to consider the resolution with Chairman Popkins' condition on it solely, if the board wishes to do so.
Yeah, you can go ahead and make your motion with only your condition. That I think would be then the way to proceed next, and we'll see if we get a second for it.
Point of clarification. So it would be, you're suggesting make the motion just to vote on the condition
Yes.
offered. Appreciate it. Okay, so with that, I would like to make a motion slightly different from what I offered before, respecting the general vibe of the commission, vibe being a technical term here. I would like to motion that we consider a condition that approval is contingent upon all electric construction be strongly considered in alignment with the City of Longmont's beneficial building electrification plan and the central vision of sustainability and Envision Longmont, pending no objections from Longmont Power and Communication. The operative change there being a shift from mandatory to strongly considered in the review process that precedes us.
Okay, do we have a second? Commissioner Teta? Commissioner Goldberg? No seconds? Okay, go ahead. We'll go with your question.
Jeremy? This question is for Jeremy.
Yeah. There.
Jeremy, is this an enforceable condition? Are we cool for? Is it appropriate to put something to make a statement like strongly consider? Who's accountable in the end as to whether the applicant and the city staff strongly consider? I'm in spirit, I'm aligned with our commissioner. I just want to make sure we're putting something in front of us that's legit.
I believe based on our code ordinance, Commissioner Goldberg, if there's a kind of a subjective criteria within the condition, it would come down to the director's decision whether or not the development met that criteria.
Strongly consider it.
Okay. So do we have a second? We do not have a second. Okay, Commissioner Teta, so the motion fails. Commissioner Teta.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept PZR 2023-3B with the condition that staff came up with approval of the drainage report for the final plat.
Commissioner Flake.
You have a second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Discussion going further. I would just like to go ahead and give my viewpoints here. I do, while I recognize some of the concern about the PD, actually, Jeremy, I do have a question. Does the ODP FDP actually override the PDU that get so with the because they have the FDP? does that mean that that overrides the PDU's cause for having the 6 units?
A lot of acronyms there.
I know.
I don't have that answer on the top of my head, Mr. Chairman. I think looking at the code section concerning PUDs, our code does provide that the approved PUD standards, to the extent they conflict with the development code, the PUD overrules the development code. So my understanding is that those additional plans would overrule the PUD.
Okay, and from what I'm seeing in our handout here, it says their PUD is a unique master plan community which was designed specifically to give it flexibility. I guess without being able to see exactly what's in the PUD that was approved back in 1995, that we have to go by trust that.
So I can provide hopefully some clarification because
Thank you, Jennifer.
prospect is clear as mud sometimes. So the PUD, basically the ODP, the overall development plan, is effectively the PUD. This particular PUD is not necessarily the kind that would be its own giant zoning code. It's very much, it's I don't want to say it's a sketch plan, but it's a very unique PUD. It's the overall development plan. And then how that is built out is you have your final development plans, which are basically filling in your overall development plan. And that PUD, that overall development plan, so the overall development plan, really think of it as the PUD. PUD is the zoning district that's applied to it, but the ODP is actually the zoning document for the overall Wallace Addition / Prospect project. So that ODP provides for staff level administrative approval of the final development plans as they may be amended, etc. So effectively that's the phasing plan, for lack of a better way of putting it. You can think of the FDPs as sort of the phasing. These different filings come in and you plug in the FDP. So the FDP was approved at the staff level by my predecessor, Aaron Bosdick, who really was the keeper of a lot of the Prospect FDPs in her time in the city. So that was approved in 2021, and it was determined to be consistent with the overall development plan. It was, which in turn would be consistent with Envision Longmont. Although it should be noted too that Prospect as a plan unit development predates Envision Longmont by a good 20 years. So it was determined that at that time when the FDP was approved, or the FDP amendment for this particular filing was approved, it was determined to be consistent with the Prospect overall development plan, and then ultimately with the overall comprehensive plan, Envision Longmont. So once that was done, once that FDP is approved, then it gets kicked back to go through the very specific development review process, which starts with this preliminary development or preliminary plat. And that's where we are today. It's a long and winding road.
Good. I feel comfortable myself with approving this with the 5 structures plus the 6th historical with all the assorted buildings. In regards with the electric, I would like it to be known in this conversation, my feelings are the fact that at this time, I do not want to set a precedent of this commission forcing somebody to go all electric at this time. It's not part of the code. Until it becomes part of the code, I feel uneasy about forcing that condition upon a builder. The applicant has stated that they are considering it, seriously considering it, they would consider it. And for the ones that we have approved that are all electric, those were not our conditions. Those were their choices, and we supported those choices, but it doesn't mean we put that condition on them. I'm just not ready to take that step as a commission to set the precedent, because once we do it the first time, it's almost then expected to go forward. That's for the city council to make it into code. That's when I'll be comfortable enforcing it then.
Just a question just to tease out this. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that, and I understand the serious consideration of precedent here that should be considered, though I do believe it's a case-by-case basis. The condition really here is how do we interpret, my question here is how do you interpret the Envision Longmont central principles of sustainability and resilience, and what do you look towards to define what is sustainable and what is not?
I look to the testimony that was given to us by the applicant, by the city staff, and they answered the questions. To be sustainable doesn't mean you have to be 100% in every category. I looked at the design, some of the stuff that they have in the design, and the way that these houses are being set up in the area that it is, and I feel that it does achieve that goal. Maybe not 100% perfect, but that isn't what we're charged with doing. We're charged with the testimony that was given to us, and it does meet the standard. Commissioner Goldberg.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. It's been a minute. I just want to restate that I'm approving the motion that's before us, given the reasons I listed earlier, the solid testimony from the commission, the approval of the recommendation from city staff, the testimony from the applicant, and I look forward to integrating some of these new guiding documents into our decision-making process in the future, I can't wait to make that a stronger part of our consideration.
Commissioner Popkin.
Thank you, Chairman Poland. I appreciate all of the commission weighing in on this, truly. I appreciate the lively conversation on this and won't drag it out much further. I do want to briefly respond to the chairman before on his comment. I respect his opinion on how we set precedent, but also want to acknowledge that I don't think that it's worth thinking about when the beneficial electrification plan was actually approved by City Council, which was late last fall. And since then, what other projects have come before this commission? And I'm not as someone in their second meeting. I don't think I have a robust recollection of what may have been considered in November or December by this commission. But I think we are at the stage to think, hopefully, a little bit about whether the beneficial building electrification plan factors into our decision making longer term. So I won't push the topic further. I will state that I will not be voting to approve this. Based on the fact that I do not believe it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, and I don't believe it's compatible with the surrounding properties in terms of the utility and building layout and design.
Commissioner Flagg.
I would like to call the question.
Let's go ahead and take our vote.
Commissioner Height. Yay. Commissioner Tedda.
Yay.
Commissioner Goldberg.
Yes.
Chairman Poland.
Yes.
Commissioner Flagg. Yes. Commissioner Lukacs. Commissioner Popkin.
Oh. There you go.
I appreciate the applicant's willingness to consider this in the future. I vote nay.
Chairman, that motion passes 5-2.
Thank you. This item now enters a 7-day appeal period. During this time, any aggrieved party may appeal the Commission's decision by submitting a written appeal letter stating why the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision should be amended or reversed by City Council. All appeals must be in writing and must be received in the City Clerk's office and the Planning Office within the 7-day appeal period. The appeal period begins Thursday, April 20th at 8 a.m. and ends Wednesday, April 26th at 5 p.m. That is our item for the public hearing. We're on to other business. Jane. No list. Okay, so I will go ahead and open up public invited to be heard in case there's anybody in the office who would like to, or in the building who would like to come forward and speak about anything that was not on the agenda today. And seeing nobody come forward, I will go ahead and close in public invited to be heard. Next is items from the commission. And Commissioner Height, you're first.
Thank you very much. During one of our breaks, I spoke with Assistant City Attorney Terrell regarding the admonishments that we are not to participate in ex parte communications. And it occurs to me that some of the public invited to speak presentations that we've heard recently are addressing in advance some projects that are very likely, if not assured, to come before us. And I find it somewhat troubling that we're being inundated by one side, the public side of this, without an applicant's presentation or an ability to defend themselves. That said, we need to weigh that against this is the public invited to be heard aspect of our hearing. So we want the public to talk, but we don't want to be pre-influenced. And it's a very tight line that we're having to deal with. So I kind of are going to ask the attorney's office to provide some guidance to us. I know that there's been some discussion about it in that we shouldn't go out to sites, we shouldn't separately, privately speak with the public about projects that we know are going to come up, but it seems in this context we have a huge balancing act to deal with.
Jeremy. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, or Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Height, I do understand your concerns and will continue to evaluate it. It's my understanding from speaking with staff that staff has spoke to the groups and informed them of the proper place to make those comments is during the public hearing, not during the public invite to be heard. Unfortunately, from our initial understanding of the situation, dealing with First Amendment considerations, we're kind of limited on what we can do with the public invite to be heard. But, that's an excellent point, and I completely understand your position, and that's something I will look into for our next meeting.
Commissioner Flagg.
Hi, I have, I was going to make comments along that line as the commissioner did. I thought it was interesting that we allowed them to go ahead and make a presentation in effect using our systems if it's just public invited to be heard, because it seemed to formalize that they could make a presentation rather than a comment. And I have one more item I wanted to bring up. For the planning director, I wondered if there has been any discussion regarding zoning for drones, areas, heights to fly over residential areas, delivery patterns, appropriate landing spaces. I don't know if anybody else reads the comments that have been made at Nextdoor and other places regarding privacy issues.
I think I did see that comment, as a matter of fact.
That was a good one.
And the short answer is no. In fact, I haven't seen anything in professional publications that takes a zoning approach to limiting drones. It may be an FAA requirement, but I don't know. Is there a local community that says you must stay within a certain airspace? Or?
I read something today that came through my email. I can forward it to you.
Okay.
And you can take a look and see what you think. My concern is that this is an issue that is now, and perhaps we need to think about how we're going to approach it going forward, because they are talking about delivery systems happening, perhaps not in Longmont, but we don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess if you could look at, my initial gut tells me that may not be a zoning, it's more of a FAA or...
That's what I thought too.
But can you look into that for us, please?
We don't, airplanes follow a certain corridor. What we do from a zoning standpoint is we notify the people that there might be something flying over and there could be impacts from it. But yeah, drone. I'd be happy to look into it.
Commissioner Lukash.
Thank you, Chair. I have a different proposal here. I wanted to see if staff could bring to us a presentation about the city's land acknowledgement. I know the City Council adopted it in 2021, and it's actually the city signed a treaty with the Northern Arapaho tribe for a sister city, and it's pretty unique. We're pretty much the only city in the country that signed a sister city with a tribe, and that treaty sits in right outside our door here. I just found out tonight. And so I want to see, learn more from staff about the land acknowledgement that the city adopted and how that translates to our work, our code, the land code that we look at all the time and we were trying to enforce or to improve all the time. So if the city could bring that to us in a future meeting to get us educated.
Sure, that would be Carmen Ramirez, so I think she said she would make herself available to make that presentation. I don't know that, I think maybe the museum board has adopted it more formally.
Right, and I've seen the museum that they always recite the land acknowledgement at their public events, and I know they're doing a lot of work through their art that they are displaying, and I think I heard the Park and Rec board adopted it a couple of months ago, so maybe it's time that we take a look at it and see how we work around it, or what does it mean for us.
And okay, I will find time to do that.
I think we're okay with that. All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goldberg.
Thanks, Chairman. Is it 10 or 11 that we have to extend?
11.
Okay, great. Awesome. I think we're in the home stretch here. Glenn, a little bit more homework for you, if you don't mind. Boy, it's clear that this Bond Farm project is going to be contentious and complicated and, filled with passion and, concern by the public. Is there a world where we could have a study session with your team ahead of that? I don't know if it has to be an open meeting or something, but is there a way where we could get guidance from staff before we head into that, before that comes to us? Maybe that violates every rule. I'm not sure.
I'm going to step back.
I feel like we've done study sessions in the past over in the small room next door. Maybe it had to be a formal meeting.
On a quasi-judicial matter?
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe just, okay. So there's not a world where we can be educated in advance, short of the packet that's presented to us.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, there you go. The groans from my peers, I see them, they're like, sorry, I need to do a little more homework myself. Then how about this beneficial building electrification plan that Commissioner Popkins brought up today? Can we talk about that? It's a bigger question, more like when we have new guiding documents that could steer, that may impact our decisions and that we should be weighing in our deliberation. Is there an opportunity for you to, or your team, to brief us on it and, kind of share strategies on how we can implement it or when we can't?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, our building official is working with a bunch of communities in Boulder County that are all trying to adopt it at the same time in a coordinated fashion. It's called the Northwest Metro Regional Energy Code Cohort. So I think we just got, maybe even today, their preliminary recommendations on it. But we expect that's going to go through till we typically adopt code changes right before the beginning of the year. So it's probably going to be more like December. And in that process, we'll be reaching out to the folks that we're going to be implementing it with. So all the builders will have input. So I think it's intended to be kind of a robust public process. So when we know and council knows, we'd be happy to show the planning commission as well. But there is a process.
Commissioner Popkin.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to second Commissioner Height's request earlier that we look into the ex parte communications. I think that will be really important going forward to make sure that we are fairly giving consideration to future proposals that come before the Commission. Secondly, I want to thank the entire Commission for a robust and lively conversation on the electrification considerations here. I appreciated everyone's point there, and while I may respectfully disagree, I do appreciate the conversation. I also wanted to second, well, it wasn't really a request, but I appreciate Commissioner Goldberg's thought on the study session on this, and given the timeline that you're suggesting here, such that I don't make motions to table every proposal going forward until after December, I might suggest we do have some kind of study session in the not too distant future on how to consider the current plan relative to our decision making. Otherwise, we may be approving numerous different site plans and layouts that would be in conflict with something that City Council might approve come 8 months from now.
Yeah, again, I guess I'll fall back that we implement plans through the code. In this case, the code will go to City Council. It's out of the Land Development Code. As far as, do you want me just to present the process then? I'm not sure what you're asking.
The process would be helpful, but I think more importantly, we have a guiding document, really, though not a formal, code or ordinance here on this. But we do have a guiding document that states clear intentions, definitions, technologies, and a robust process that went into forming that strategy. That, in my opinion, informs how I think about the definitions of some of the terminology that we have in Envision Longmont.
Okay, so you want to review the code changes?
No, I think, just to clarify, I think review how the plan should or shouldn't be factored into our decision making when we are reviewing the development review criteria, specifically that reference the terminology and definitions outlined in Envision Longmont as a comprehensive plan. I'm happy to talk offline about clarifying exactly what we might want to cover there, but I think the intention of Commissioner Goldberg was to just get clarity on this regard, and I would welcome that.
What we can consider and to what degree we can consider it.
Exactly. No, thanks.
Okay. Is that it for the Commission? Items from Council Representative Rodriguez.
That mic is straight up. He's not.
Always very thorough.
Okay. Items from Planning Director Glenn Van Nimwegen.
I'm surprised this didn't come up, but the Senate Bill 213 that is coming forward, I just want to assure you that staff is paying a lot of attention to that. Jeremy is certainly paying attention to it. I think the council recommended denial unless it's changed. We're seeing changes already, so it's definitely a piece of Play-Doh at this time, but we'd certainly like to present that to you as well at some point.
Please.
That is all I have.
Okay. With all that being said, we are in adjournment.